Um, yeah, an hour after workers went in, the whole building collapsed. It literally took just 90 seconds for the whole thing to go down. Um, as a result, including rescue workers, 1,134 workers were killed and nearly 2,600 were injured. One of the problems that exacerbated the whole situation was the fact that exits were really poor. So the emergency exits are only few. The ones that were there, they were blocked by materials and whatnot. The stairs are narrow and doors were locked. So workers are basically trapped inside. Many were trapped under the rubble and machinery for literally hours and even days without food, water, anything, just trapped under the whole collapse. As a result, this is really horrible. And I should have done a trigger warning before. There's a lot of just really unnice, distressing content. Because workers were stuck inside, a lot of the time they had to have their limbs amputated while they were trapped inside. Sometimes they had to do it themselves. The doctor, there was an account of a doctor putting anesthetic in the woman's arm and she had to cut it off herself. Other times someone else did it for them. And I'm gonna share some of the quotes from the day from the victims. This is Safali Begum, who was 23 years old. I was working on the 4th floor on the eve of the Rana Plaza collapse. At the time of working, suddenly, I noticed that many of the workers were crying and running aimlessly. Then I could notice that the building was collapsing over me. Whoa, I'm so sorry. Then I could notice that the building was collapsing over me. I ran and stayed beside a pillar. The whole building collapsed within 2 minutes. My leg was trapped in between two walls. I lost one of my legs. I also got hurt in my head of the fallen roof. My head, hands, back were badly injured. I was rescued from after 5 to 7 hours of the collapse. After 27 days of treatment, I was released. I can feel pain in my body till now. I cannot move without the help of others. To be free from these kinds of suffering, I tried to commit suicide twice. I'm so sorry. Taki Begum, please, please cut off my legs, but don't delay anymore, she said. You are pulling out dead bodies, but I am still alive. Rescue me. I beg you, brothers. One of the doctors produced a syringe of anesthetic before pausing to ask if she had any legal guardians. She named her husband Jahangir, but could not remember his cell phone. If your legs are cut off, you will get crippled, the doctor warned. Your husband and family will no longer want you. I don't care. I have 2 children. I want to see them again. The doctor, a large man, took the hacksaw and set to work, but he couldn't get enough leverage in the cramped space to drive through the bone. The newcomer Hira took his place, bearing down as Peggy screamed, until finally she passed out. Sometime later, the wail of an ambulance stirred her awake. I'm so sorry. Basically, I've been reading these for a while, but I haven't processed it, so that's why I'm just reading out loud. It feels a bit different. And then there's one thing I remember are the people who tried to actually save the workers. One of the volunteers, who was a bricklayer, said, I was only thinking that I have a great responsibility to pull out bodies. Even if it kills me, I had no choice. So now I want to look at the aftermath and what happened. The aftermath and what happened in terms of compensation, health and safety, and how the workers are at the moment. So there were a lot of Western brands found within the collapse, including Primark, Zara, Mango, Walmart, and as well, obviously, people expected them to pay up, but there's no kind of legal contract to ensure they pay up. So a campaign was created with trade unions, organized different different campaigning organizations, and just it was a really collective movement to try and demand that these brands pay up, even though it's literally like, that's literally the bare minimum what you can do. These workers died making your clothes. It doesn't make sense. And so as a result, the collective amount that they totaled up to be that should have been collected is 30 million. So that was how much they estimated would be needed. The campaign focused not just on the brands who were producing in the factory, but also brands who weren't producing in Bangladesh as well. I mean, in the factory as well. The problem is that a lot of brands, they didn't, they're very reluctant, which is crazy to even say or think, but they're very reluctant to pay up and pay for the compensation. And if they did, a lot of the time it was very dismal. So Walmart who had net sales of 482 billion, donated 1 million. Yeah, it's mad. And so yeah, there was Benetton as well, which basically it took years to convince them, and in total it took 2 years to get the compensation needed, which is crazy. 2 years to actually end up to make up that 30 million. And this is a pretty prominent activist, Kalpona, who basically just said that, look, these guys could have fished it out in 2 seconds. They could have given the money. They chose not to. And that says a lot. When the compensation did come, a lot of people, however, were after a couple of years, the money dried up, and we realized that the compensation wasn't enough to support these workers or even the victims at all. Many are now actually struggling because of it, because obviously they've spent money on medical bills, daily expenses. Now a lot of them can't work in full-time work anymore, too scared to go back into work. And in fact, one study found that 57.3% of victims reported they had received a quarter or less of what they were promised. So yeah, this is one particular quote. I can't actually see it because my screen thing is in the way. Can I move that? Yeah, I can. Yeah, so the compensation I got after the crash was mostly spent on my treatment. Now I can't work like I used to, have no regular income, and there are days I wish I had not survived Rana Plaza. I'm gonna skip that just because that one's quite long, and I've wasted a lot of everyone's time already. Yeah, so another report found that 1 in 5 of the survivors' health is deteriorating last year. So yeah, for example, 20.5% said their physical health condition is getting worse, 51% remained unemployed, 27% are, 74% can't get into work because of physical injuries, 27% due to poor health, mental health, 10.5 are still suffering trauma. And this is a really good study as well that came out last year. It's actually publicly available. I know that now because I don't have any access to universities anymore. So this one really highlights not just the physical element, but the mental element as well. I'm not going to read them because I'm going to start crying. That was embarrassing. Yeah, so that mainly highlighted how the physical health issues include headaches and eyesight problems, kidneys. There was a lot of kidney issues because a lot of people actually their kidneys were damaged. Headaches, just head injuries, psychological trauma, and also there's survivor guilt, because a lot of them feel like they should have been the ones in the rubble, because they know that a lot of it could have been avoided through for example, the exits. The fact that there were people who were trapped inside, so a lot of them feel that survivor guilt. Also barriers in terms of healthcare, because a lot of them, there's no money, so they can't afford to actually go to the places to get treatment. They can't afford to get the help they need, so they're basically just left for themselves to struggle because the money is just not enough. Yeah, this is this guy, sorry, my thing's gone wrong. I'm so sorry, something's messed up. Okay, I'm just gonna have to ignore it. So Noshad he was one of the volunteers who helped on the scene. He really was involved in the Rana Plaza evacuation, he was quite well known. However, his mental health started deteriorating, and unfortunately, last year he set himself alight um, on the anniversary of Rana Plaza. And obviously, this highlights like the mental trauma that people have been going through, and just yeah, it's just mad. Another thing that was created was the Bangladesh Accord. So actually, about a few years, maybe about 3-4 years before the actual collapse, there was calls by Bangladeshi trade unions and labour rights organisations to create a scheme or a system to protect workers, because there had been loads of fire disasters in Bangladesh and generally across the garment industry. So people were trying to do this for a while. This isn't an old thing, but because of the pressure from because of Rana Plaza and how just drastic, just how mad that situation was, and the public outcry, it got sped up. And obviously, because brands now wanted to look good, they obviously signed up, and it got easier to bring them into this. So the accord was created. There was one called the Alliance, which was so the difference between them is the accord was one that is seen as being like a breakthrough sort of program, because it included trade unions, it included like workers. It's legally binding. That's a really big thing to remember, legally binding. So it meant that brands had to pay up to this scheme, or they'd get a fine, they'd be taken to court. And some of them did get fined as a result. So the legal aspect, the worker aspect, and the trade union like involvement within the actual governance structure was seen as like a really big prominent thing. The alliance was one that was created by Gap and Walmart, which are in that picture, because obviously they don't want to be held accountable. So if you create your own one that isn't legally binding, then you can get away with more. So they created their own one called the Alliance. This was actually, sorry, I forgot to mention, this was a 5-year thing, but it and then it got extended. But then Bangladesh kind of took the accord to court, I think. And then they say Bangladesh are trying to get rid of it. So there's going to be a new scheme coming up that's kind of led by Bangladesh, as opposed to a collective thing with the like Western, Northern labour rights organisations and the brands who are heavily involved in it. Yeah. So yeah, the accord did have impact in terms of health and safety. So for example, the number of accord factories and multipurpose buildings actually dropped by 49%. So obviously, as Rana Plaza we mentioned, it was like a multi-story building. Those sorts of factories went down 49%. There were a lot of temporary evacuations of factories, and generally in terms of fire, health, safety checks, and just maintaining factories. A lot of factories are covered under this, and they also trained workers within them to become like how to know how to be aware of health and safety, and the training was really good. And there was also a worker mechanism where workers could express their concerns, etc. So generally it's seen as a good thing in terms of health and safety. However, I actually did a dissertation on this, about the criticism of the accord. So it's basically it was good in terms of health and safety, but there's criticism regarding the extent to which it addressed the kind of root issues of exploitation, such as the general practice and purchase, which we'll get onto later. How well they addressed like the root issues of exploitation generally. A lot of workers and people on the ground said it didn't really help in their opinion. There wasn't much like they didn't really address trade unions, which are key to health and safety. Limited worker voice, and yeah, there's been quite a few criticisms. I feel like I could go all day about this, but I'm not going to cover that. Basically, there's concerns about the extent to which it addressed the root issues of the situation. So now I want to get into how much has actually changed, and the way I do this predominantly is through addressing purchasing practices, which I just mentioned. So that basically is defined by how well brands, sorry, it's near the waiting room. Oh, it's still those people. Okay, I don't trust those people. Okay. Yeah, purchasing practices. So this is how I define, well, not define, but I get an indication of whether conditions have improved in the industry, and not just in Bangladesh, but because what happens in Bangladesh kind of mirrors what's happening in the garment industry to an extent, in terms of how pattern between the power dynamic between brands and factories. So purchasing practices are basically how brands do business with their factories, and there's different areas you can look at. So this is a report that I actually use extensively in my dissertation as well, which looked at the extent to which conditions have actually changed in the industry since Rana Plaza, and particularly with Mark Anna, the researcher. He really looks into the purchasing practices, and I like his research is really good. That's what I was going to say. And so yeah, basically it found that exploitation has basically gotten worse to an extent. If you look at how much brands try to squeeze profit from their workers, this can be indicated, for example, by the fact that, so my thing just got lost. Okay, so the prices paid by brands to their supplier factories has declined by 13%. So that's how much they pay their factories to make their clothes. So it's gone down by 13% since Rana Plaza. Lead times have reduced by 8.14%. So lead times are basically the time they give factories to make their clothes. So with fast fashion, obviously the brands are trying to compete against each other to make sure that they're the first one to get on the trend and whatever. So the lead times have declined. Wages have dropped by 6.14%. And based on like labor rights indicators, violence against workers and violations of their rights has increased by 11.96%. So for me, this is a big deal. Like this sort of research really hits home the fact that despite Rana Plaza, despite what happened, and despite kind of like the awareness that people have now of ethical fashion and the prominence that is put in society, if you look at the stats and the general treatment, like if you look at the stats and the research, it looks like brands are further like deepening the exploitation in the global south of their workers. And yeah, these are all the reports that came out since last year addressing this, like the fact that purchasing practices are actually ridiculous. Like brands are continuing to decrease how much they give their workers, how much they give their suppliers to even make their clothes, how much they decrease the time that they give them to make the clothes, or even to just being very like unpredictable. Like 1 minute they're like, oh, you need to make this in like 2 days, or you need to do this, and then punishing them if they can't meet the expectations. There's even like disciplinaries where they'll put discounts on how much they give the supplier because they haven't met their demands. Like it's actually mad when you read the research, especially the one that says paying for a bus ticket and expecting to fly. That's actually mad. Like it's a long report, but it's really like if you read into it, there's a lot of quotes I've actually put up here. I don't think I'll go through all of them, but yeah, this one is from a supplier in Turkey. One thing about Turkey, because again, there's one issue that comes from the constant demand to decrease how much you pay. So what happens is there's forced overtime and there's subcontracting, which is where factories subcontract. So they give the orders to another factory that's unregulated. So that means they're even more dangerous because no one's checking to see if they're okay or not. And here in Turkey, they found Syrian refugees because they can be paid less, they can be further exploited because they have no sort of papers or identification. So if you look deep into this, it's really sinister. Yeah, so we're getting pushed more and more to reduce lead time. Sometimes we have to confirm some short lead times without any security. That's like financial support. If we don't agree to lead times, we might lose the order. And in turn, what this does is, also I forgot to mention one thing. As a result of this, suppliers are actually competing against each other to make clothes as cheap as possible. So someone described this to me as like cattle. So suppliers are in like a room and each supplier has to say how much they can make something for, and the cheapest one gets the deal. So obviously suppliers are going to find a way to cut costs, and that leads to further exploitation. So workforce overtime, subcontracting, and also incentivizes abusing workers. And as a result, because again, a lot of these workers are women because they're cheaper, and that's why brands choose to have women workforce. They are subject to sexual abuse, physical abuse, and It's actually mad. Like here you can see in the quote about the ban on anything, bathroom, drinking water, breaks. Like it's actually mad. This is really horrible. And it really emphasizes like, I know obviously suppliers are like disgusting for what they do and this should not be allowed, but you can see, if you look at it from the outside, you see that brands are largely like, while they put out these things about how they're so ethical and they're this and that, this is what they tolerate, this is what they know, this is what works essentially to meet those targets and to meet whatever. Like they know this is happening and they just kind of let it happen because they want to meet their profit things, profit margins, profit targets. That's it. Okay, so another example. So you've got the purchasing practices that clearly show that brands don't give a, Another thing was coronavirus. Now, this is mad. Like, also, firstly, this picture is of workers in Pakistan who are social distancing but also protesting because they haven't received their wages yet. So they're garment factory workers. Sorry, one second. So, sorry. Basically, the whole situation with the coronavirus is that brands, their stores obviously have been closed because of lockdown, right? Now they're losing profit. And so generally as a corporation, the first way you go about trying to save money is to target the most vulnerable who have no legal protection. They can't really stand up against you and whatever. So a lot of brands started cancelling their orders with their factories. And these orders had already been processed or were in the process of being made. And this means that in the garment industry generally, what happens is the clothes that are made, they're initially paid for by the factory. So the supplier pays for the raw materials, the human cost, all of that. And then once it gets shipped off, the brand then pays for it. So the brands have stopped getting their clothes shipped because it means that they don't have to pay for it. What that means is that factories have actually already paid for this. Like they paid for it. And because they're not getting many money for it, the workers are not getting their wages and factories are closing down. And brands know this. They know that their workers aren't going to get paid. This was like a huge thing. And as a result, we all obviously, like, here you can see workers are now, as we speak, protesting outside factories. Obviously they can't social distance because they're protesting. And they're demanding that they get their wages paid. Now, it has worked, but the fact is they shouldn't be doing this in the first place, right? It's actually a madness. And I want to just clarify that brands can afford to pay their workers. Like there's this whole thing, oh, we're losing our profits and we can't do it, it's really hard, whatever. Labor costs are about 10% of the actual production cost. It's really easy to pay their workers. They're choosing not to. I just want to emphasize that. And also emphasize the fact that these workers who are literally being put on poverty wages by these brands, they don't have any savings. They don't have any means of protecting themselves while they're unemployed. Like a lot of the migrant workers are walking for days back to their village because there's no transport. They can't afford it anyway. And they're trying to walk home because they can't afford to live in the city. And also they generally want to be with their families, which makes sense. Like, it's actually mad. Like, I can't really say much. Like, the fact that that's happening. And the fact that brands have taken complete, like, after exploiting these workers to the max, they can just simply have, like, dismiss them or be like, just abandon them, basically, the people who made their profits in the first place. Sorry, I just want to see what was in the chat. Oh, it didn't come up. Oh, sorry. This is a quote from one of the protesters right now, 21-year-old Sajidul Islam. We are afraid of the coronavirus. We heard a lot of people are dying of this disease, but we don't have any choice. We are starving. If we stay at home, we may save ourselves from the virus, but who will save us from starvation? This is a big thing I've seen about the coronavirus versus starvation I've seen from workers. Like, yeah. when I get speechless just because I don't know what to say, like it's just, I can't, it's just mad. And I do this a lot, like I've been doing this for years, but you don't get, like, you don't get over it. So why has not much changed? I'm not looking at my phone, I'm looking at my notes, by the way. Um, okay, so I really wanted to address like the root issues of what's happening. And again, I do want to emphasize that like I wish this would be spoken about more, but I guess it is what it is. Capitalism. Now, I can't have a conversation about the garment industry without like talking about and addressing capitalism. Now, the very existence of an economic system that's dependent on extracting profit from the unpaid labor of workers, that is basically capitalism. It sounds like I've described the garment industry, but that's literally what capitalism is. You can't separate those two. Like, it's not possible. The fact that workers, like if you look at that diagram where you look at what I've just said before, the brands are continuing to find ways to extract as much profit as possible from their workers, and that's resulting in exploitation. That is what capitalism is. You can't take the garment industry out of capitalism and just like critique it, because the existence of capitalism is what is making this industry what it is. And again, in terms of the ideal pursuit for profit, the fact that capitalists, so like brands, are competing against each other to make their clothes as cheap as possible so they can get more, they can attract more customers and make more profit. Again, this is capitalism. This whole thing is capitalism. You can't, like, in a dream world, we would not have capitalism because that is what's creating this issue in the first place. And I think that needs to be like, that's like the disclaimer. Like anything I address in terms of what can be done to change the industry is done within the context of capitalism, because you can't have ethical fashion under capitalism. This is a meme that I like. There is no such thing as ethical consumption under capitalism. Once I sent this to the place I used to work, which was the labor rights organization, and I don't know what they thought of me, but I did it. Western imperialism, wow. This is something I've struggled to explain because it's actually mad, like in simple context. But basically, with Western imperialism, so imperialism, the definition is basically a policy or ideology of extending a country's rule over foreign nations, often by military force or by gaining political and economic control of other areas. Now, post-independence for like the global south, I think my screen is getting darker. I don't even, was this, yeah, okay. So post-independence, keeping notifications. Okay, never mind. Wrong one. No, go back. Western imperialism, post-independence, corporations and, well, the global south are basically trying to find ways to ensure they can continue the extraction of profit from the global south. It sounds very kind of conspiracy, but when you look at what I show you next page, you'll see what I'm going to say. So there was this new ideology of, not new, but they just, the like kind of implementation of neoliberal policies. Neoliberal policies, they basically aim to take away state regulation and put it in the hands of multinational corporations, because the idea is that the state can't, like, the state can't be trusted with the economy. So what they did was they started giving loans to the global south, like countries who were in dire need of money because they just been through bloody colonization. And they said, on the condition that you implement these following policies. Now, these were neoliberal policies which opened up their economies. So that means that multinational corporations from other countries come into their country and do what they want, because the state there was deregulation. The state didn't have much regulation, and they could basically go in and do their business, whatever. And there was an emphasis on creating export-led economies. So this is where your economy is dependent on selling goods to other countries. And so when you, for example, with Bangladesh, when their neoliberal policies started being implemented in like soon after independence, soon after, because they were struggling with state independence, and then the second, the guy Ziadur Rahman, is that his name? Oh my gosh, my Bengali history. He basically was like, okay, let's do this. So they started opening up the economy, and it became very much like very neoliberal. And as a result, a lot of multinational corporations come in, do business, i.e., get their clothes made there. There's no regulation. They can and that's because of there's not much regulation, they can get away with evading laws on labor rights, and they can exploit the workers, and there's no sort of check on them. And largely because the power of these corporations are mostly from the global north, because obviously they have that power on their side. And so you might be thinking like, that's the corporations though, that's not the countries, it's not the UK, it's not the US. However, this is a book I'm currently reading, and I haven't finished because it takes me like ages to read books. I read a page about 4 times until I move on to the next one. That's why I'm still halfway through it. But there used to be a summary online that I used for my dissertation, and this kind of hit home again, like how the economies of the global south have been constructed to ensure that extraction of profit by the global north. So here basically goes into how a significant proportion of revenue from the retail price of clothing goes to the state in taxes, who receive a greater proportion of profit than the multinational corporations. So basically, countries in the global north that are selling these clothes, or that the country that the brand is based in, are getting more in tax than the corporations actually make per item. So here you can see that H&M pays a Bangladeshi manufacturer £1.35 for each t-shirt. Oh, so I have a quicker version here. A standard H&M t-shirt sold for $4.95 in Germany, 95 remained in Bangladesh, shared between the factory owner, workers, and everybody in Bangladesh. GDP, Bangladeshi government, €3.54 counted towards the GDP of the state in which it was consumed. This resulted in H&M making 60 cents per shirt, and German state acquiring 79 through VAT. So by cutting the labor costs and ensuring these brands make more profit, I don't know why I'm saying, sorry, I went blank. So by cutting the labor costs and ensuring brands can make more money, in turn, countries in the global north are essentially making more, which is mad. Like, because through the VAT of the clothing, like that was like one thing that I realized that really hit me, because no one ever spoke about this, like the fact that we actually, our system, like at not NHS, because no one the country's not really particularly cares about that, but when you look at our taxes and our funding, like to fund public services, etc., it's based on the exploitation of the global south. And this is basically the evidence you need for that, which is just mad. So basically, the global south has been manipulated such that its economy is dependent on the investment of multinational corporations in the global north to go in, to make their money, to exploit the workers, exploit the environment, and in turn, by them making money, the global north makes money. That's basically what I'm trying to say. And it's just mad. Finally, no accountability. So there's no actual legal protection, legal sort of system to hold brands or corporations liable. Now, a lot of them are binding, so non-binding. So that means that I'll show you later, there's principles that are put out there. But if brands go against it, nothing much happens. They have lots of money, so they can avoid any sort of being held liable because they've got lawyers to sort them out. There's limbo because they use subsidiaries and certain clauses that allow them to get away with it, like through loopholes and whatnot. And Rana Plaza is a good example of this, because look, it took 2 years to literally get money for the victims of people who died in a factory making their clothes. It's no gamer. Those brands should have been held legally accountable, as well as the people who actually, like in Rana Plaza, the Sonel Rana, who was an idiot and made the whole thing in the first place. Also, those who speak out about systematic those who speak out are also at risk. So human rights defenders are people who are largely at risk because when they talk about what's happening or they get exposed, they are then kind of persecuted in turn. I forgot to mention something, that's what I'm thinking. With this, what I wanted to say was because brands are, these countries have been made dependent on the investment of these multinational corporations, they have no choice but to comply with their demands. So for example, Bangladesh were to be like, no, you need to start paying our workers more. They'll be like, oh, okay, then we'll just move elsewhere. Because again, there's no barrier. They can just quickly move their business elsewhere. There's no kind of, it's easy for them to do what they do because there's no regulation on them. And then Bangladesh will go, because they depend on their investment, they're going to be broke. Like they're going to have nothing because the garment is all they have. That is one thing I wanted to point out, the fact that brands are utilizing this to exploit workers because they know they can get away with it. I don't know why I just remembered that now. And so this is a prominent quote. The international legal system protects criminals in the private sector and leaves individuals defenseless. That's kind of long. I don't know if I should go through that because I've wasted a lot of time. This is basically, this is really interesting to look into because it really highlights the power corporations have. So basically in a trade agreement between two countries, a multinational corporation in one country can sue the other country for going against agreements in that, clauses in that agreement. So for example, if a country wants to try and improve their labor rights or their human rights, environmental rights, etc., but it goes against what the corporation wants or it goes against their motives, they can sue that country. And it's happened a lot, and it's particularly targeting the global south because, and you can see that's basically how they're trying to make sure that they can't protect their workers by these legal sort of clauses and whatnot. It's mad. I've actually done a definitions video and page on this, so you can check that out. So a lot of people talk about the guiding principles on business and human rights and the OECD guidelines for multinational enterprises. These are good. They have good policies. No complaints there, but they're not legally binding. So if anyone goes against them, what's the point? Labour actually promoted the guiding principles on business and human rights. So in their manifesto, they said they were going to pay more attention to that, which is a shame because here we are now. Now, sorry, one sec. One thing that's really important to talk about is corporate social responsibility, which basically is like all the policies and programs brands put in place to supposedly like improve conditions for their workers or people like in the villages and whatever, all that crap that they say they do. The thing is, these are basically voluntary things, so they can put out all these good policies. And if you saw the fashion revolution oh my god, I didn't say that. Well, I was like really not. What did I say? Fashion revolution, transparency initiative. They have this new thing out, yeah, that basically measures transparency. So how well brands say they do certain things. It doesn't measure much because I actually looked into it when I worked as a research assistant last year. Like it basically just measures all these policies they have that where they say they do these things, but they don't. Like they actually have CSR sort of groups within their organizations where they create these amazing looking policies that say they care about workers and they use all these terminology and that not doing anything. And it's not even because it's not, again, legally binding, it's voluntary, they're the ones who are in charge of it. You can't really monitor what they're doing, and they're not doing anything. And I think this Nike one is a good example because they launched this whole girl effect sort of program to support females and female empowerment and whatever. Then on the right, you got them paying poverty wages for their workers making their clothes for footballers and whatever. Like CSR is like, it's just, what do you call it, greenwashing? It's not, it's just like absolute bull crap. And yeah, this is from a research good Banerjee. I can't remember his first name. He goes, despite all these initiatives, very little has changed in terms of working conditions. All these codes do is make brands look good and consumers in the West feel less guilty about their purchases. And it's true, they put all these things as badges of honor to say, oh, look, I'm ethical and all of that. But when you look deeper, and that's what used to annoy me when I used to work where I used to work, because we'd have to put out these things saying, oh yeah, this brand has done this brand is part of this brand has done that. Like Uniqlo joined some UN Women thing. Meanwhile, today is actually the anniversary of them abandoning their workers in one of the factories in Indonesia, Jabagamindo. There's like a huge campaign on that. I was supposed to post about it today. They abandoned them. They haven't paid them, and it's been years of campaigning. And it's just like they use these CSR things to promote themselves at expense, but nothing's happening. It's just kind of like, what do you call it? Publicity stunts. So what, I'm nearly done, don't worry. What needs to be done and what is being done now? Obviously, this is within the context of capitalism, because, you know, like, it can't be completely improved on capitalism, sorry. Worker social responsibilities. So this is like a contrast of CSR, which is a new thing that people are trying, where they're trying to implement policies like those ones, but this time round, it's run by workers. Trade unions are involved. It's legally binding again. The Accord obviously had its issues that I could go into, could do another talk about, but the idea of it in itself was good. And if you get that legally binding aspect, and if you can enforce trade union and worker involvement, it can be amazing. The gender justice one, that actually came out last year, and it's actually pretty cool. Like, the workers had been campaigning and active for a while, demanding an end to sexual harassment and abuse in their factories. They created, they've now got a legally binding agreement with the suppliers, as well as the brands such as Levi's and some other ones I don't remember the name was. The Children's Place, Contourang, I don't know some of these, with brands. So the suppliers have to comply to this program, or the brands have to cut ties with these suppliers. And in the context that the brand also supports this as well. So this came out last year, so it's going to be interesting to see how that goes, how that works. But it has been shown this sort of this worker social responsibility. If you look at the worker-driven social responsibility network website, they have got instances where this is being successful and worked, etc. So it'll be good to see how much this could impact workers. Also, I want to say those UN binding principles need to be legally binding. They're really good, but it doesn't help if they're voluntary. And also, I just want to say there needs to be some more legal accountability. This is a new argument I have, not new argument, but it's something I've realized over time. Legal accountability is the only way you can deal with this crap. And there's one law in France called the duty of vigilance law. So that is kind of is a step in progress, because you can it's a way to hold corporations accountable. So that's kind of baby steps. But I'm just it's been so long. Rana Plaza has happened. How has there not been any legal accountability? But obviously corporations have power in it, so it is what it is. This is really key. Global solidarity with workers, which I feel isn't highlighted as much. For me, I think this is the key to any sort of campaign or to just demand change. But the idea that workers are protesting, organizing as we speak isn't spoken about, the extent of the struggle that they endure, the work they do while working crazy hours. It's unprecedented what workers are doing right now, even in this country. I'm not just generally the struggle workers have had, and the work they do is just amazing. And I think we really need to address that. So this is an article I refer to all the time I talk about this, because he really emphasized that generally with the North, what we do is we talk about what we've done to change conditions. So, oh yeah, we did this, and as a result Nike did that, but we don't realize that there's been a systematic campaign created on the ground by local people who have created this whole movement, and we've simply complemented it with ours, as opposed that's what's happened. But instead we be oh yeah, we did this and then this happened. I think with my last post I did about Primark, and I emphasized that it was collective, we all did this and everything. It was more workers, and I felt really weird saying, oh look what we've done, guys. But it's I feel what am I trying to say? I don't want to overemphasize what we've done in the North, because we're doing the bare minimum. Tweeting a company, come on, that is literally the bare minimum. There's workers who are literally, as we speak, on the ground protesting, demanding their wages. I think there is a tendency for us to dismiss the power that the workers in the Global South have, and think we should be aware of the movements that are happening on the ground to change conditions. So there's an example here of a factory that was producing for Nike. workers were demonstrating to improve their working conditions, and they actually ousted their government-controlled union. So Northern Union activists, they were praised for encouraging Nike to respond to this. But when John Wells and whoever else is looking into this, looked into the actual campaign, you'll see that workers had already established local networks of support among local university, women worker centre, and the local community. They were the ones who actually created a connection between Nike and the union. So they did most of the work, but it was framed in a way where the Northern activist was kind of the leading role, savior of the whole situation. Again, like this whole savior thing we have in here. And so he argues that campaigning from the North complemented the struggle rather than being the main reason for the success. And in the future, transnational solidarity must be centered in local Southern workers' struggles. And again, describes the factory as the base of the pyramid upon which any campaign stands. And I think that's something that in the North we can kind of try and take on board, because workers are organizing to the max. And I think it's our duty to at least show solidarity in a way that doesn't make ourselves seem like the hero, which is called the boomerang. There's another thing called the boomerang pattern of influence, but I won't go into that. So here's some examples of like kind of global solidarity. So when with the whole Rana Plaza compensation thing, Bangladeshi trade unions were like on it. And I was going to say on a bonnet, but that's really embarrassing. Why would I say that? Yeah. And then on the other hand, on the left, I don't know if you're right, we were like, I wasn't, because I didn't do that stuff, but were like organization on the ground here were organizing as well, trying to demand compensation from the brands. Also here, you've got the last year, no, not last year, 2018, around December time. When I tell you that, what was it, 50,000 workers, I read, 50,000 workers left their factory. 50,000 workers, it's mad, left their factories and protest to demand an increase in minimum wage. As a result, a lot of them were blacklisted and were told, like, which means that they can't work in any other factories because they've been listed as someone who was involved in protests. Organizations across the North helped create pressure on the brands to ensure that like brands were aware that certain factories were blacklisted, that they were supplying from had blacklisted workers, and to ask what they were doing about it. So that helped a lot with the workers organizing on the ground. Also, most recently, if you've seen the updates, Primark, this is a mad one. Like, basically, they began this whole coronavirus thing saying they're going to cancel their orders with workers. And there was a huge backlash online, and we all were campaigning. Some of you probably tweeted as well, asking Primark, like, what are you doing? Like, why are you like denying your workers the right to their wages, etc. So then you move to the next article, which is where they're like, oh no, we're not going to do that. We're going to instead create a wage fund for garment workers. So they're basically saying they're going to now give money they create a fund to support garment workers. But this was really shady because there wasn't much like insight into how they were going to do it. They said they were going to see how much the government is paying and then pay the rest of it. And it was just really shady what they were saying. And everyone was just like, just pay your workers, it's not that deep. And then if you look at the next most recent article, they've agreed to pay their suppliers. So the backlash works, guys. And look, if you look on the right, there's the workers organizing. So it's like a collective sort of thing where we complement the organizing that's happening and listening to what workers want as well. And yeah, why the sudden change? Hashtag Destiny's Child. Yeah, emphasize workers have always been at the forefront of change. Last slide. Don't worry, guys, nearly over. What can we do? So obviously, you guys probably know my criticisms of like boycotting, ethical fashion, and how that's become like the focus of campaigning. And as you can see, even though there's been this whole rise in ethical fashion, you can see that the industry is probably worsened to some extent. If you look at the look at the purchasing practices, keyword, goods, look at the coronavirus, what happened there. You can see like there's not much going on. So it's like, and generally I feel like that through the emphasis of ethical fashion, again, it's kind of the whole Northern activist sort of thing, like I can create the change, I can be the change, but the thing is workers on the ground creating that change, and it's our duty to stand in solidarity with them and listen to what we should be doing. And boycotting, I don't agree with. I'm just going to put that out there because it's not that easy when you've got an economic system where Bangladesh's economy is dependent on the garment factory. You can't simply boycott the fast fashion industry. People can't afford to boycott as well, so that's something you think about. And I could do a whole topic on that, but I won't. So first one, share worker stories and voices, because again, I want to emphasize they're also often silenced and forgotten. The fact that I embarrassingly cried on here, emphasize I haven't read the stories in a while, and because I just don't read. I see things, like I see articles, like I see headlines. I forget that there's humans behind what I'm posting, and it's easy, to be honest. It's good to do that for me, to the extent that I can't personally process emotion a lot of the time. So when I do, it's just like, oh. So I kind of need to do. I need to like block that emotional side of me. But then it hits me when I read these things and I see these things. Like, yeah. And I think that's important again, to humanize it. It's not like, I mean, it's nice to do some of the things they're doing, like wearing secondhand and clothes up and, oh yeah, look at my secondhand clothes. Like, it's nice, but like there's humans behind. There's like humans behind the actual Rana Plaza collapse, and I think we can't cover that up with like happy ethical fashion stuff. Like sometimes we need to actually address, like, there's workers behind these struggles, workers behind our campaigns. Look at International Women's Day. That was based on the New York factory fire, where hundreds of immigrant workers died because of the. It was very reminiscent of what's happened recently. And I had a slide on that, but I deleted because there was not enough space. But anyway, share worker stories and voices, support workers organizing here in the Global South. What's happening in the Global South in terms of neoliberal policies, it's happening here as well. If you look at delivery drivers, if you look at ASOS warehouses, maybe, if you look at generally workers' rights, they're being stripped from us. And Margaret Thatcher is largely to blame for that, the Conservatives. So supporting workers here is so pivotal to supporting workers there and creating this kind of unification of all of us, because we're all struggling out here. Like, corporate trying to rinse us out to the max. If anyone remembers my experiences at the works, I used to rant about that for days. 4-hour contracts, minimum wage, having to like be a beg so that your manager will give you more hours. Like, it's happening everywhere. And also largely, it's not just people in Global South, that migrant workers here, because you've basically, the key is to exploit the most vulnerable. And that's usually migrants and immigrants. Normalize conversation in the garment industry. So again, do many people even talk about the garment industry in terms of prominent people? And it's not their fault. Like, I'm not putting it on individuals, and I don't want to do that. But the reason is because brands have so much power, corporates have so much power. So if you're like an influencer or something and you get that money through your influencing and you need to get that brand sponsorship, I mean, let's not criticize people's choices, because some people are, it's like survival. Some people it's not, so it's a bit like, what you doing, mate? But at the same time, like, these individuals, we shouldn't be targeting them, but acknowledge that brands have such a big power, like have a control on influencers and prominent people. So as individuals who don't have that, we should be using our voice as much as we can. And again, I think because fashion is kind of like a whole guilty conscience thing, where, oh no, I'm buying from these brands and I feel bad. And that's kind of why people don't really address the issue. But that's why that's why you should be motivated to address these issues, because we're unfortunately part of this system where our clothes are built on the blood of people in the Global South and workers here as well. So just use that to incentivize your conversations, because yeah, I can't be I'm not there's loads of people out here doing it, but they're usually like people who do this because this is what their blog is about, this is what they're they do some sustainable thing. Like, people in general, we just need to create a conversation where it's okay to talk about exploitation in the garment industry, because it won't be spoken about elsewhere, because famous people, again, prominent people, they're dependent on that money, so they're not going to talk about it. They're least incentivized. A lot of people are least incentivized to talk about it. I don't even know if that made any sense. Honest discussion about deep reasons behind exploitation. Capitalism, Western imperialism. Let's talk about it. Refocus attention on corporations. Again, let's not talk about what individuals are doing. Let's not talk about, like, again, there's a big thing about overconsumption at the moment. Yes, that's important, but why are we not talking about the fact that corporations have got more power over their factories than before? That should be the conversation of this whole week, but it's not. Like, that, those articles I showed you, those are the things that blew my mind. Like, why are these not being talked about? Why did no one know this was happening? Like, I think there needs to be more change in how we discuss things, from not just our consumption or our buying, which is important, and we are also very complicit in that, but at the same time, public outcry over corporations is very important too. I thought I deleted that. Let's not gas ourselves up too much. That was basically because I don't like, I like when people, it gives me hope when people tell me that they've benefited from what I've said or done, but I'm doing the bare minimum. I'm literally tweeting, and I've got a lot of privilege on my side, which allows me to do this. And I think instead of looking at, oh wow, look what we did, we pressured Primark, we should be looking at workers on the ground who are literally risking their lives. I mean, obviously we can, it's a balance, but maybe because I'm just very self-critical, so I don't really do that. But it's like, we need to realize that there's a bigger thing happening beyond what the northern activists are doing. Like, oh wow, I bought a secondhand top, it's really good. There's workers like literally protesting on the ground while they're looking after their kids, while they're looking after husbands, while they're doing whatever on the ground. I think we need to pay more attention to those activists, in my opinion. Collective action is key. You can see that from coronavirus, what's happened, how we pressured brands to actually pay their workers. And I hope this has shown you the importance of collective action and just using our privilege and our voices that we have, because a lot of people don't have that, or they risk their lives using it. We have it. I am not at risk by saying, Primark, pay your workers. And the impact that that tweet has, along with hundreds of other tweets, has like, that's the one thing we have on our side. That's collective power. Other than that, we don't have much. But when we have that one thing together, we can change like anything. Look, we pressured a multi-million, bloody billion, whatever corporation to pay its workers. That's mad. That is actually mad. So don't deny your impact as an individual, because when we all work together, we can actually change crazy shit. Like, I wasn't supposed to swear because I'm recording this, but it's actually mad. So I think that's it. Yeah, that's it, guys. Oh my god, my voice is hurting. Oh, sorry. These are some organizations I follow to get updates, and also who are just on like campaigning. In terms of campaigning organizations in the global north, like who work with people in the global south, Clean Clothes Campaign, Labour Rights Forum, Solidarity Centre, IUF is really good, Workers' Rights Consortium is really good, Asia Flow Wage Alliance is really good. Yeah. Okay, I'm done, guys. I'm gonna stop sharing. Oh no, I'll put it on the main thing. But yeah, I'm sorry if I talked so long. I'm sorry for the beginning, what happened with that. Let me know if you have any questions. No? Just checking the comments. Thank you for this. Is it 8:23? I have to go. Oh, so I'm just reading the comments now. Oh, no worries, guys. Oh, thanks, Sophia. I don't know if you've gone now, but thank you. Why not boycott companies? I like that question. Oh, thank you. I really appreciate these comments. I feel like do you know what? You know, when I cried, I think that was because of the beginning. Like, I was so pressured. And then when I read the emotional, basically, imagine I was in the garden, like doing my research, and I'm trying, like, I hate showing emotion. So I was in the garden reading these Rana Plaza things, and it breaks me like every time. Like, and so I'm in the garden trying to, like, oh, I'm fine, I'm fine. And then I was like, no, I can't cry. I can't cry at the presentation. Look what happened. But honestly, I feel like, so I'm just reading the questions. So how do we scrutinize companies effectively? Honestly, companies, all brands are crap. Like, they're all, I don't like the idea of comparing one to the other, saying, oh, this one's a bit better because of this one's a bit better because of that. Their whole premise or their whole existence is based on exploitation, so we can't really compare them. In terms of scrutinizing them, look at, what was I going to say? I'm just trying to think of any good resources. I think the best thing you can do is, if there's ever, like, you ever see a violation and a corporation has been linked to it, straight away tweet them. Max 2 minutes of your time. Ask them what's going on. and then share other people's as well. And the thing is, you can create a ripple effect where everyone starts demanding, because I think at this point, again, collective action is only the only way at this point. So I think, yeah, tag them, tweet them, share things, comment on there. And the thing is, one thing I want to point out as well is that this has been proven to have impact. And I say this a lot, like if you look at how we can mobilize against things like cultural appropriation, for example. So we get pissed when someone puts like a bindi on, or like they okay, I'm not denying cultural appropriation is a bad thing. I'm just saying when we see someone with like ASOS, when they had that chandelier head clip instead of a ticker, and everybody went off on them, like whole diaspora bloody went insane on them, and good. And as a result, they got shook, and they've never done so. Have they? I don't know, but we have impact. I think they must have responded, because that's why I'm thinking about it. And also, in other instances, what am I thinking? When H&M had that racist T-shirt, people rightly so went off on them, and they apologized and they deleted it. Do you see the impact we have? Like, brands listen to us. So I think it's so important, again, to emphasize, please scrutinize brands openly and make it okay for everyone to, because I think once we all do it, everyone will do it. Like, I think like, I've done this for quite a few years now, and this is one of the hardest campaigning things I've done. Like, I've done Palestine, I've done refugees, like Calais refugees, and this is the hardest thing to get everyone on board by, and I can't figure out why. And I think it's because it's not a thing. Like the environment, veganism, that's the thing. Like, I don't want to wait for another Rana Plaza for people to want to get involved. And again, I don't want to put this on everybody else, but I don't want to wait for Rana Plaza for people to be like, oh crap, let's start asking brands, let's start doing this. We need to do this consistently. And it's not that hard. Like 2 minutes out of 24 hours. Like, you can do it. So yeah, scrutinize companies whenever you can. If you see anything against them, if you ever see anything on my Insta page, and you're just like, damn, not even that, just tag them in the post, like just like at Gap, whatever. Like, yeah, you can do it. Why not boycott companies? I like that question. So again, I want to emphasize that brands, what was I going to say? Bangladesh is dependent on the investment, but as with other countries, Bangladesh is dependent on the investment of the. Okay, no. Firstly, workers and activists on Bangladesh say we not to boycott. They want to work. They just don't want to be exploited. So when activists and workers are telling you in Bangladesh, don't boycott, you don't boycott. Simple as. It's like with the Palestine and BDS. Palestinian activists told us boycott Israel. We're doing that. So listen to workers on the ground, and also again, like it's a very systematic issue. It's not so simple as boycotting, because the whole of the global south is dependent on this garment. Not the whole, sorry. A lot of countries in the global south are dependent on the garment industry. Like, it's not that easy to be like, oh yeah, let's boycott. But what are you gonna do then? Like, they're not gonna. I mean, unless it's systematic. If you aim for one brand and you say, look, we're gonna boycott you because of this, it can have impact. And to be honest, to an extent it has, but the actual execution of boycotting, I don't think we should be boycotting, because it's a very complex issue. And again, it kind of like brings the whole individualistic thing, like as an individual I should be responsible, I should be boycotting this. And also, you can't be boycotting everyone. So a new set of problems would arise if we boycott brands. Exactly, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Really appreciate the focus on workers' protests and need for legally binding initiatives, and also looking at the. Thank you. You know what? I'm so glad someone said that, because I feel like after a while I've kind of like, you get really what's the word, disillusioned, or I've been talking about this for quite a while, and you know when you feel like you're just talking to like not talking to myself, but I feel like I'm not heard, or like it's not taken seriously, or I feel like, oh yeah, and I feel like maybe because a few years ago when I was saying these things to ethical fashion people, they're like, oh yeah, that's right, retweet, yeah, but no one was talking about it. Now I'm seeing more people talking about capitalism, but taking a bloody long time, innit? I'm joking. Yeah, I just felt like for a while, like I just felt like what, like how do we bring this in conversation? So I wanted to do that. Thank you for such a good talk. You mentioned that discussion on our topic. I think it. Do you know what? Oh, thank you for uploading those petitions, by the way, Liana. Definitely. I'll share it as well on our page. I think have I? ILRF, by the way, I think they're really good. Like I've been following them for a while, and that's why I promoted them at the end because they're sick. Like, and obviously, you know what? Honestly, with me, I'm very critical of a lot of organizations and companies. So if I tell you like I like this person, like that's a big deal, or that's a big thing. Like it's very I'm very critical of you in terms of their interaction with the global south and how they function and work. ILRF is really good. Need more discussions. Oh, sorry. For me, it's mainly like I think because there isn't much discussion. Just start from the beginning, like retweet, share things, be like, oh my god, have you seen this or whatever. Like start small because we haven't got many conversations on it in the first place. And also again, like you know, when people talk about fashion, the first question I used to get was, what brand is ethical? Maybe I should boycott this. Like, just be like, listen, yeah, like that's not the answer. Like, why you should tell me? I'm joking. Just be like, like we should be focusing more on corporations. My brother does this to troll my mom because basically she's into like boycotting and all of that. Not boycotting, but she's like she always kind of puts it on like the individualistic sort of thing. And my brother will like troll her and copy me, like, no, we should be blaming the companies because they're the ones with the power. So it's like just reminding people of that. Yeah, again, it starts small. Oh, you said apart from tweeting, misread that. But I think those conversations are important. Now that these, I would have done more of these, but the thing is, it's really hit and miss when I do these events. Like sometimes, like 5 people come, sometimes no one turns up, sometimes 7 people turn up. So I don't do it a lot. Like I'm going to be honest, but the feedback has been really nice, and in terms of like, this has been valued. So I'd like to do more of this. I wanted to do a workshop actually, on how to do what you said, like how to encourage collective action. What can we actually do? What does that actually mean? Because I keep saying collective action. What is that actually? So I wanted to do a workshop on that. I don't know if an online one would be possible. There's someone I had in mind to work with on that. Also, I wanted to do collaborations with like workers and unions like across the world. But the thing is, again, because these events are hit and miss, I don't really want to make them exert so much labor and time into something that not many people see. Especially when it's their own time and they've got so much else going on in their lives. Like I think it works better for like bigger organizations, which is something I struggled with because I was like, how is it just me speaking about this? Like I should be having people to engage in this and talk about these, but I don't want to put people through that, to be honest. On the issue, yes, so I just read that already. Or if I avoid high street shops or support shops, I'm more ethical. Yeah, defo. I'm not against that. I think I just don't want that to be the center of our activism, if that makes sense. Like, I don't want that to be the main thing that we focus on. I don't want that to be the first thing you think. I want the first thing in your head when you hear that violation is which brand was involved, who can I contact, what am I going to do? Not so much, oh, I need to avoid them or I need to buy more ethical. I need to do this. Like, I just want to change the conversation. So that is the first thing you think about, not the ethical fashion aspect. Because when that becomes the center of your activism, I feel like that it becomes very individualistic, and ethical consumerism, it kind of just promotes kind of like a apolitical means of addressing a very systematic, like deep rooted issue. Yeah, so like, cool. Oh, that's good. Okay. There's someone I wanted to do this with, but I'm not sure if they'll be backing. Basically, there's like these in the 90s, there were like really big like demos and protests to them when they found out that they when like in the 90s people discovered that Nike and Levi's and that were exploiting their workers, so there was huge campaigns which I wish we would do here. Like I wanted to create that. Like I wanted to have like an activist group because I feel like a lot of groups aren't like they're doing the work like research and campaigning, but I wanted like a proper activist thing where when we find out about a violation, that's it. We all do like some Twitter storm on them. We go to their like one of their main stores and create a hoo-ha, like hoo-ha, I don't know if that's a word, but make a big scene. And yeah, that's what I want to do, is do a setup like that. That's what I was thinking. I want to do it last year, but I'm not gonna lie, only this year and part of last year we've actually been getting more like attention. Like for years it's kind of been, no one's really been like paying attention to what we do. So I feel like now people might back it more. But yeah, I really want to like maybe like a WhatsApp group where everybody's part of it, and like whenever we hear a violation, we're like, look, have you seen this? And we're like, no, let's jump on them, like let's do this. That would be something good, because I feel like in the 90s there was something like that, and as a result brands did change to an extent. They created those CSR policies, which I guess was a way to kind of cover up the crap. But I think that'd be cool. Oh, bye, thank you for coming. I'll talk to you soon, hopefully. Did anybody else have any more questions? I forgot what I was saying. You can unmute yourself, I think, as well, if you want. Also, I can't get out of this screen, I'm just frozen. I'll just wait a bit. Have I been talking too long? Can't get out of it. Yo, I'm literally frozen. Oh, there's a chat. Oh, okay, one sec. I was proper like stringent on the, oh my God, you know that thing that happened at the beginning, yeah? Oh, that was mad. I'm dead. I'm gonna laugh at that like that, but I was crying at the beginning. Okay, I'm muted. Oh. Yeah, does anybody? There's someone who wants to comment, but I'm terrified. I'm actually scarred by that incident, I can't lie. If not, I'll just end it and wait 5 seconds.
I don't have any questions, but it was really good.
Oh, thanks, Hamida.
Okay, really, really good. But you should, yeah, definitely share the recording with people.
Yeah. I think a lot of people couldn't come.
Yeah.
So I'll definitely do that. I forgot when I started recording, to be honest.
Near the beginning, it was pretty.
Okay, that's all right. Okay, I'm gonna end it now.
Okay.
Oh, you're here with your sister. Cute. Oh, I'm reading the comments, sorry. Oh, thanks, guys. Oh, thank you. Plus. So I'm just reading the comments. And then I promise I'll end it. Or you can leave. Oh my God, no, I haven't done my eyebrows. Oh my God, Fahim. Man, like, I think I missed a nugget whenever I think of Fahim. Okay, I'm gonna go for real. Okay, I've been taking up too much time. Thank you guys for joining. I'm sorry about the beginning and the little breakdown I had. Okay. Yeah, but on a real, seriously, I hope this kind of gave an idea of what my opinions are and what I think, what's happening now in the garment industry, mainly what's happening in the garment industry, what we can do to show support and solidarity. I'll leave it at that. Bye, guys. Once I figure out how to get out, I'm dead.